Hello everyone, and thanks for checking out this clip/training. What I'm going to show here is how to deploy your UiPath Orchestrator in an Azure PaaS environment using the scripts that UiPath provides. The knowledge that you will need for this is the following. You will need basic PowerShell skills, you will need basic Azure skills, and that's pretty much it. Now let's take a quick look through the prerequisites. What you will need is the installation files. In case of UiPath PaaS products, the files will always be the ones in zip format. In order to get the zip file, you'll need to open up a browser and access this URL, download.uipath.com/uipathorchestrator.zip. Upon hitting enter, you will see the download start. It's 1.4 gigabytes, so it should take a few seconds until it's done. After the file is completely downloaded, what we'll need to do is to extract its contents to a folder called UiPath Orchestrator, so let's do that. And the last thing here would be to browse to this folder in our PowerShell instance. So we're going to go here and type cd and then just paste the path where the installation file exists. And that's all for now. Afterwards, we will need to set up our resources in Azure. First thing I'm going to set up will be our database. And I'm going to use this SQL database PaaS offering from Azure, and I'm going to hit create right here. This will open up the page where we give all the configurations necessary for this, and you'll have to complete this with your own values where you want to deploy this database. This is my resource group. I'm gonna put a name. It's going to be named Demo Orchestrator DB, which should be fine. And for the sake of this experiment, I'm going to create a new server. It will be named Demo Orchestrator Server. Okay, that seems to be available. For the location, I'm going to select the same location where my app services will exist to avoid any latency or performance issues. So right here, I'm going to select West Europe as that is the region I am going to deploy in. And here we're going to use SQL authentication, and we're going to set up a username and password. It will be orcadmin in my case. And I'm just going to paste the password right here from my clipboard, and I'm going to hit OK. Now it knows to create the new server. Want to use SQL connection pool? No. In my case, I'm going to use locally redundant storage because I don't need all of that, and I'm going to select something cheaper because it's just an experiment in our case. Let's use a standard database. Apply. After setting this up, we're going to go to the networking step, and here under connectivity method we're going to select public endpoint, and we will tick this where it says allow Azure services and resources to access this server. This is important because our application will need to connect. We're also going to add our client IP, the one from our local machine, because we're going to use that in the deployment, and it needs access to the database to create the tables and fill them up and all of that. The rest we can leave them as they are, security and additional settings and tags. Under review and create, we're just going to check all the details, and if they are correctly set up, we're going to hit create. This is validating right now, and it should be done in just a second. Our database is now deployed, so let's browse to the resource in question. And once we're here, what we want to do is to get the connection strings. This will be found on the overview section right here under connection strings, show database connection strings, and we'll copy this and I will paste it in this notepad right here. An important thing mentioned in the documentation here is that we'll need to set trust server certificate to true, and we'll need to configure the password that we created for this database for the user orcadmin. So we got our connection string. That's good. We're done with the database, and now we can go ahead and create our actual web apps. We'll need 4 of them as per our latest version to accommodate the following resources: the orchestrator, the identity server, the webhook server, and the resource catalog application. So let's get to creating them. I am going to do a naming convention similar to what we've seen in this notepad file right here. This will be my orchestrator app, my identity, my webhooks, and my resource catalog, so I can find them really quick. So what's left now is to go ahead and create them. I'm going to copy the name of the orchestrator app And afterwards in the Azure portal we can go ahead and create a new resource. It's going to be a web app, so hit create right here. We're going to fill out the details, so the resource group, the web app name, the runtime stack as mentioned in the documentation should be .NET Core 3.1. The region should be selected as the same region where we have the database, again to avoid any kind of performance issues, so West Europe. And then we'll need to select or create a new app service plan. Let's create a new one for this case, so it will be a demo app plan. Okay, and let's see the sizes for a second. So Orchestrator being a bit of a resource intensive application, especially if it's used at its maximum potential with lots of jobs and lots of robots connected to it and lots of queues and all of that, you will need to use one of the production machines that Microsoft offers. What I'm going to recommend is to use either a P1 V2 for a demo orchestrator or maybe a testing orchestrator if that can handle your load, and for production maybe to consider a P3 V2 or even something higher like a P3 V3 in case your usage is very intensive. For the purpose of this test I'm going to use a P2 V2 machine. So let's select this one and hit apply. It's now set up as that. I'm going to do an extra thing here which I kind of would recommend you to do as well, and that is to deactivate Azure Application Insights. Azure Application Insights is a tool that helps you monitor the application through Azure. I will not be using Application Insights for this specific scenario. Let's now hit review and create. If everything checks out here we can go ahead and hit create and the app service will be created. Once the resource is deployed, we'll need to go ahead and set up the configuration as the documentation stipulates. So we're going to go ahead and open up our web app and go to configuration. We're going to go to general settings, make sure the platform is set to 64 bits and WebSockets are set to on. Once you've set this, click save, continue. And then the next step will be to add the connection string inside the app settings. So going back to application settings, we're going to create a new connection string. We're going to name it default, as this is the name that the code will actually check to set up the connection string. So any other name will provide an error later on in the installation. And for the value, we're going to paste what we retrieved earlier from the database and added our password. So we're just going to paste this here. As I have an Azure SQL, I'm going to select Azure SQL and hit OK and save. Now we have all the prerequisites for our Orchestrator application set up. And the last thing we'll need to do here is go to overview and copy the URL we got from Azure and paste it in our notepad. We have 3 more apps to set up though, so let's get to work. Going back to the default screen, create a new resource which is going to be a web app. I'm going to take the second name right now, the name for the identity application, and I'm going to paste it here. Select the same resource group as you did before, and then select the same plan as we selected before. Then the runtime stack, .NET Core 3.1, we're going to select the same region, once again, West Europe in my case, and then we're going to select our new app service plan that we just created, demo app plan, and then review and create, and let's hit the create button. Once this is done, we're going to go to the resource and again go to the configurations tab. We're going to add our connection string. It's going to be named default connection in this case. Again, this is the default, the only name it will work with, so you're going to have to select the same name. And then I'm going to paste my connection string right here and again select SQL Azure, as that is where my database exists. I'm going to save this, and once it is saved, we're going to go under general settings and select 64-bit application. Everything looks good in rest, so we're going to save it. Again, the last thing to do here will be to copy the URL that Azure gave us for this app service and paste it in our file for further use. Now let's go ahead and create the webhooks and resource catalog apps. Again, we're going to have to make some modifications. The webhook application does not require a connection string, but it does require to run on 64-bit operating system, so we're going to save that. And that's basically all for the webhook apps so far. Last thing to do, of course, is to copy the URL and paste it in our file. And now let's create the last application. As mentioned in the documentation, this one is a little bit different as it will require .NET 6, not .NET 3.1 as the rest of the applications. We're going to set it in the same region and in the same app service plan. Again, I'm going to deactivate the application insights because I'm not going to use them. Everything looks okay, so I'm going to create. And that's basically all the apps we're going to need in this deployment and in this demo. I'll just wait for the app to be created successfully, and then we're going to set it up as mentioned in the docs, and finally we're going to start our deployments. App is up, let's go to the resource. We'll go to configuration first. Resource catalog will require a connection string and the name for it will be default connection, the same as in the identity app. We're going to add that right here and put our connection string that we created earlier, set up SQL Azure and save this. And one more thing to change here, set it on 64 bits and let's save. Continue. Last thing to do, of course, is copy the URL as we've got used to. So now we got all our prerequisites met and all our resources created. So it is time to actually run our scripts. The scripts will be found again in the documentation in the left hand side right here. For all the 4 applications you will find all the parameters you will need for this deployment, and in the end you will find some demo scripts which I would recommend you to use. An important thing to be discussed here is that the actual script will need to log into Azure to perform the actual deployment. As of version 22.4 you can use 2 ways of authenticating, either using an app registration key and secret, or either using your own user in case it has contributor role or more on the given resource group. Today we'll be using the second option with a no Azure authentication parameter, so it will use my own account in Azure as I know it has enough rights to deploy everything there. An important thing to keep in mind is that the scripts are meant to be run in a specific order, and not running them in that specific order may ruin the whole installation. So I will follow this order throughout the rest of the demo, so you will see exactly what is needed. So I've got the script I'll be using for Orchestrator deployment right here. We've got action deploy, unattended installation, the URL to the package which is in the same folder we're running, stop application before publishing. I'm giving it the resource group name and also the app service I just created right here, demo Orchestrator 22-4, and the parameter no Azure authentication to use my own account in order to deploy. Pasting this here and let's see what it's doing. Okay, so now the Orchestrator script has successfully installed the Orchestrator and the database table it needs. So now we can go ahead with the next step and publish our identity web app. This is the script we're going to use. Action is going to be deploy once again, the path to the package and to the CLI package, which are both in the zip file we downloaded and extracted earlier. Then we're going to give it the identity server URL. This is going to be the full URL, not just the name of the app, and also it's going to have a /identity at the end of it. This is very important, so make sure you add it. Then the Orchestrator URL we've used before, we're going to set this up here. And we also need to configure the Orchestrator details and the identity server details. So we're going to put our Orchestrator app service name here, the research group name, and the target slot, which is by default production if you have only one target slot, and same will go for the identity web app. The research group for me is pre-added, and then I'm going to add my app service name. The target slot is the default production as I have only one. Let's not forget to add this no Azure authentication, because that's what we want to use. Go back to PowerShell, clear, paste this and run the script. Okay, so now our identity service is also deployed in our Azure PaaS application. As the documentation stipulates, now we've got some manual steps to do, adding some app settings into the identity app service. All these details will be found also in the documentation. It's mentioned right here. After running the above script, which was to install the identity, make sure you perform the extra steps listed below for a successful initial deploy. So we'll need to go into the Azure portal once again and open up our identity app service, which is demo identity, and then go to TLS SSL settings, then to private key certificates, and then we're gonna need to upload a private key certificate. This certificate will be used for communication between the Orchestrator application and the identity server. It will not be used anywhere else. So this could be very well a self-signed certificate, but if you want, you can get one from an official issuer. I have a self-signed certificate which I created using a similar command to this one right here on screen. I'll be using that one. I will not be creating a new one right now, but it's pretty easy to create a new certificate. So once you have it, you're gonna want to upload it here in the Azure portal, browse to it on your PC. In my case it's called A, and the password is A, so I'm going to add these details and upload it. Once it's uploaded, you're going to see it here. We're gonna need to copy the thumbprint as we will be using it in further configurations. So I'm going to paste it right here. And now the next thing we'll need to do will be to go to configurations and add all the app settings that are mentioned in the documentation. So one by one, click on new app setting, then go to this page, copy the name, paste it right here, and for the value add whatever is written on the right. In our case, this should be the identity server address with a /identity at the end, and we'll continue doing this one by one. Make sure there are no white spaces. Okay. This will actually contain the thumbprint that we used earlier. So I'm going to paste it here. Next one will be signing credential setting. In my case, I will not be adding the app settings for Redis as I'm not using Redis. But if you have a Redis setup with high availability, you should add your Redis connection string and password right here. Same goes for the load balancer, the Redis settings, and the use Redis store client cache. Same goes for app SAML2 validity certificate only. The last two certificates, however, we will adding the thumbprint one more time, loading it, and the profile one, exactly like here. Once we have all these app settings added, we'll hit save and continue. We'll just double check that all of these are according to the documentation and they look pretty correct. So once this step is done, we can go ahead with the third script we're going to run now, which is migrate to identity server. What this script will do will be to basically connect our identity server with our orchestrator and create all the client IDs and secrets in the database that will be used between this communication. It will also set up the certificate we just added as the main certificate to trust in this relationship. So we're just going to have to add our details right here, same as before. We're going to add our orchestrator details. The resource group name is basically the same line as above. You can copy it all together instead of this one, and same goes for identity server details. Identity URL and orchestrator URL are the same also. Here is where you will give it the host admin password and the default tenant admin password that will be actually used to log into the orchestrator once this step is finished. So please make sure you remember the password, you save it somewhere, the password you give it here, because this will be used to log in after the installation is done. Once all these details have been added, we can go ahead and copy this, little clear here, and paste our script right here and run it. So again, this will go through the database, create new tables for identity, and add all the details for client IDs and secrets there. Okay, and now the migration is complete. Let's go to the next script, which is publish webhooks. Let's add the script right here. It's basically telling it to deploy it, telling it where the package is, the resource group we're going to deploy to, the app service name, which is going to be this one, demo webhooks 22-4, and no Azure authentication again to use our own account. We're going to run this in PowerShell after we quickly clear this. Just as a best practice, it would be good to actually copy these values and store them somewhere, because there are cases where these secrets can be lost maybe, so it would be best if you have them backed up somewhere. Either way, going back to our clear, we're going to paste our command right here and run it. Okay, the webhook application has been successfully deployed, and now we will need to migrate to webhooks with the next script. Let's go ahead and paste it right here. So what we're going to need to add is the orchestrator details, once again in this format, so we'll just use the same as before, and then we're going to need to add the webhook details, which is going to be the same resource group as should it be in your case, and the app service name for webhooks, which is demo webhook -4. Okay, and no Azure authentication. We're just going to go here, clear, and run it. This is done also. Step will be to publish and then to migrate to the resource catalog. We're going to add the script right here. The script again is deploy. We're telling it to deploy, it's not an upgrade. We're giving the path to the package, the resource group name, and the app service name for the resource catalog, which in our case is demo resource catalog. And again, no Azure authentication. We're going to copy and run this script in PowerShell. It's going to connect again to Azure and deploy the needed files. Okay, so once this is succeeded in deploying, we're going to run our last script, which is migrate to resource catalog. We again need to give it the org details. Just going to paste them from here once again, and we're going to have to pass it the resource catalog details. The name of the app service is right here. Targets for production. resource catalog URL and identity server URL. Again, this will need to have the /identity at the end. Okay, and we're also gonna need to add no Azure authentications. So once we configure the script, we can go ahead and copy it and run it in our PowerShell. And basically that's it. We've got a full complete installation of Orchestrator. The app has been also restarted, so now we can go ahead and browse to it and see if it works basically. So we're going to go and browse to Demo Orchestrator 22-4, and this will redirect us to the Identity web app, so that means everything is working correctly. Upon providing the credentials, it will bring us back to the Orchestrator web app where everything is working. So that's basically it. That's how you install your Orchestrator in Azure PaaS. Yeah, hope you liked it.